This is another video regarding another restaurant chain, which I think when you hear this story you'll probably say, I can certainly relate to that. One restaurant chain that surprises me to this day that they still exist is called IHOP, the International House of Pancakes. When I was about 9 or 10 years old, my father and mother and my sister, we went down to Panama City, which is right there near St. Augustine, Florida. And we used to go down there every year with our camper. Now, I might be wrong about a certain location, but I'm not wrong about this restaurant. We had just gotten back from the beach, and we were in the car, and we didn't have any shoes on because we were obviously outside. We had come back from being out, in the ocean, and we wanted to stop by and have something to drink. It was really, really hot that day, and my parents said, well, let's go into IHOP and we'll get something to eat and maybe something to drink. And my sister and I were the only two out of all 4 of us who had no shoes. Well, we got to the table, and the waitress came over and said, I'm sorry, but we can't serve you. You have to leave. And my father said, why? What have we done? And the cashier said, well, your children have no shoes on, so we can't serve you. And so my parents looked at each other like, they're children. I mean, what's the problem with a child not being in the restaurant without shoes on? So we went back and forth with the cashier, and finally the manager came. And the manager said, you're going to have to leave now. I mean, it was almost like we were in the restaurant with some sort of a deadly weapon, a deadly disease, a deadly something. It's not so much it's a health issue, it's the fact that because you walked into their restaurant without a proper thing covering your feet, and because we were young children, like 9 or 10 years old, they weren't going to serve us. And that event stood out in my parents and my sister in my mind forever. And that's been 40 years later. We still don't go to IHOP, and we never will, because of that one instance where we wanted to come into the restaurant to have just something to drink, something to eat. I don't even think when they said that they would serve us, Dad had asked them, well, can't we at least get something to drink? We're very hot and we're very thirsty from being outside. And they adamantly said, you'll have to leave the restaurant until you can get some shoes or something to put on your feet. I know everybody's going to say, well, that's the law, that's the health, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm going to say this. Nobody in our society today would even tolerate that. If somebody came into that restaurant and said, well, I'm sorry, my kids don't have shoes with them right now. They're back at the camp, or they're back at the wherever. You would not ever expect them to do that to a child, to say, get out of here, you bum, you don't have something on your feet. And whether it be a health issue or not, they still could have at least have given us something to go, so we could have had something to drink to take with us, and then we could have waited outside the restaurant. But they wouldn't even do that. They would not serve us, period. And they told us adamantly to get out of the restaurant. And only one time since then did I ever think to myself, well, maybe we ought to give them a second chance. So we went back to an IHOP again. The service sucked. That was back in the late 80s, as I remember. I think it was like 87 or 86 we went to an IHOP. And when we finished that meal, I said to Dad and Mother, I guess you guys absolutely were right. This place ain't worth coming to. And we never went back. So I would say to IHOP, if you're watching this video, or anybody who goes there, you leave impressions on people whether you believe it or you don't. Because we never went back again. Because of this one instance where we were wanting to get something to drink, and we never did get it. We never got service at all because of the fact that we did not have shoes on our feet. And I cannot tell you that it was actually one particular restaurant or another in that area of Panama City, Florida, or in St. Augustine. I just know that that's where we were taking our vacation, and that we were down at the beach swimming, dried off, probably hosed down with one of those portable shower things that they let people wash off the salt and everything off of your body. So we were totally decent. I mean, it's not like we were walking into the place where we looked less than respectable, but it was the fact that we didn't have shoes on our feet. Now, Mother and Dad did, because I don't believe that they went into the I don't think they went to the to swimming. I think they were out there on the side of the, you know, on the beach itself, on the sand, watching us. And you know, it's it always leaves a bad taste in anyone's mouth to know that a restaurant or any place you go expecting to get service would turn you away for just something so stupid as that. And then to make it sound like you're literally doing something heinous when you're in there too. And this was during the time before terrorism even existed. You know, it wasn't even an idea back in the 70s when we went. And we'll never go back. So to IHOP lovers everywhere in the world, whoever watches this video, I would say to you, really think about who you're dealing with as a restaurant or any kind of a service, because you know, they can single us out and say, get out, we don't like you, or we don't like what you are wearing or how you look or whatever. They could do it to you too. And it really was surprising it happened the way it did, because I don't really think they cared whether we came back, which we didn't, you know, until I asked to have the chance to come back one more time. But it's just one of those things where you never forget it, because you know how they treated you that one instance. It just sticks out in your mind forever. So if you like pancakes, if you like waffles, I'm endorsing Waffle House, because Waffle House is open 24 hours a day. And number two, they've been around probably even longer than IHOP as far as serving breakfast. They've been doing it forever, since the 50s as far as I know. We've never had a bad experience at all at Waffle House. Now, I've had some scenarios where we went into a Waffle House and you had to wait because there were so many people there, but it wasn't to the point where if you showed up there, they would turn around and literally chunk you out the door like IHOP did, because that's what they essentially did that. They didn't physically grab you and throw you out, but it was almost to that point, because the manager was not going to service and he didn't intend for us to stay in the restaurant either. So, you know, all of it together was just sort of like health department came in there and did a test, it would have been an F or a 0, fail, because they didn't uphold the principles of what IHOP always claims that they're there for, and that's to give customer service, respect, whatever else that they were projecting to people. It didn't happen when we went in, and we never have been back. So thank you for allowing me to share my experience, and I hope those of you watching will realize that some places are just nasty by instinct. They're mean by instinct. And when they're like that towards you, you should say to yourself, I will tell my friends, I will tell my own family members, do not come back here again. And you know what? If enough people are treated like that, you will go out of business, because then they're going to say, oh boy, you know, we've really hurt ourselves in this situation. Chick-fil-A, as a matter of fact, has done that same conniving scenario. I'm not endorsing gays or homosexuals, but they did do something to that effect as far as their policies forbade them from hiring people who have immoral lifestyles, and homosexuality is definitely one of them. So Chick-fil-A was picketed by gays last year or year before last for that very reason, that they would not hire people who were of a homosexual or gay lifestyle. And I mean, they might hold up for that standard, but you know, Truett Cafe now has died, and his policies of customer service have died too, because I have had an experience of being in their restaurant for 30 minutes waiting for an order I made and never got it, and now it's kind of affected my feelings of wanting to go back to Chick-fil-A again. And that kind of stuff leaves an impression on your mind. And the only wonderful thing about restaurants is you can go anywhere you want. You don't have to feel like your money's only good at one place or another. You can go anywhere. But it certainly doesn't make those particular restaurants look good when people aren't treated fairly and they end up feeling like, I'm not going back there because of how I was treated. Because if enough people do that and go through that same thing, those restaurants won't be there. Because enough people say no way and boycotting you, I'm not going back, then that'll be what happens. The gay situation with Chick-fil-A, I don't think that probably ever will amount to anything, because probably 80 to 90% of all the customer base that goes to Chick-fil-A are still Christian people who feel that what Truett Cafe began, whether it's still going on or not, is their mode, that's their modus operandi for wanting to go to Chick-fil-A, is because he began his organization with that understanding that they wanted to honor the Sabbath day. Well, now customer service implies to me that they care only about the money part of it, and it's a facade to say that they still are closed on Sundays, because you don't see that attitude of Christian value through what their employees do when they encounter you. And that's why I don't go back, because I don't see that. I didn't feel that. And I think if they're going to lie to the public and say that they are still a Christian organization, or they value Christian ethics, and then they don't practice it in the restaurants, there's no reason for anybody to go there. And that they should abandon this idea that we're going to keep a facade open, that number one, we're going to hire only college kids or high school kids. That's supposed to make a good impression on people, just because you're saying you're hiring young people. Young people, by the way, who have not learned manners or attitudes of respect, because I didn't see it. Number two, to say that you're going to create a facade after he died of that we were going to still stay closed on Sundays. Well, you're procrastinating, because you're not standing by what Truett Cafe began in his attitudes of service to customers, and that's not being shown or projected in any of their restaurants. Some people probably are seeing it because they're favored by the management team of that restaurant. If you're a repeat customer who comes to that restaurant all the time, they already know you. But if you're an outsider and you show up, they don't really care whether they serve you or not. They're just going to take that money you hand to them, and then you could be waiting, in my situation, for half an hour to get your order, and then they finally will give it to you. And favoritism, folks, is not something that is ever something that was valued or practiced by Jesus. And I don't think that Chick-fil-A is serving itself to say we're going to lie to some people and not lie to other people about customer service. But getting back to IHOP, whether they be an organization of Christians or not, it didn't exist then, it still doesn't exist now. I don't feel comfortable going into their restaurant to know that I'm going to be singled out for one reason or another, of a profile. Who knows why they felt the way they did about us? I don't know. But I know it wasn't because just the fact we had walked into their restaurant without shoes on. It had to be something more than that, because they were practically chunking us out that door. You know, get up, you're not being served here. It's time to go on to somewhere else. You know, that sort of thing. And so they didn't want us, we didn't come back, and we never have, and then we never will. So that's my story. Thank you.